Hello and welcome back to Bluehat Cybersec Academy. In this video, we will explore further topics from Domain 3 of the Certified in Cybersecurity exam, which is about access control concepts. This video isn't just for exam preparation, it's also perfect for anyone interested in building a strong foundation in the world of cybersecurity. So, we are going to discuss the following in this lesson. Number 1, defense in depth. Number 2, then defense in depth in practice. Number 3, examples of least privilege. Number 4, privileged access management. And last but not the least, privileged accounts. Make sure to watch till the end, because these topics are the foundations of cybersecurity. If you haven't already, subscribe to Bluehat Cybersec Academy. Your path to becoming a cybersecurity professional starts right here. All access permissions include access to buildings, server rooms, networks, applications, and utilities. These are all implementations of access control and are part of a layered defense strategy, also known as defense in depth, developed by an organization. Defense in depth describes an information security strategy that integrates people, technology, and operations capabilities to establish variable barriers across multiple layers and missions of the organization. It applies multiple countermeasures in a layered fashion to fulfill security objectives. Defense in depth should be implemented to prevent or deter a cyber attack, but it cannot guarantee that an attack will not occur. Now, let's move on to an example of defense in depth. A technical example of defense in depth, in which multiple layers of technical controls are implemented, is when a username and password are required for logging into an account, followed by a code sent to the user's phone to verify their identity. This is a form of multi-factor authentication using methods on two layers, something you have and something you know. The combination of the two layers is much more difficult for an adversary to obtain than either of the authentication codes individually. Another example of multiple technical layers is when additional firewalls are used to separate untrusted networks with differing security requirements, such as the internet from trusted networks that house servers with sensitive data in the organization. When a company has information at multiple sensitivity levels, it might require the network traffic to be validated by rules on more than one firewall, with the most sensitive information being stored behind multiple firewalls. For a non-technical example, consider the multiple layers of access required to get to the actual data in a data center. First, a lock on the door provides a physical barrier to access the data storage devices. Second, a technical access rule prevents access to the data via the network. Finally, a policy or administrative control defines the rules that assign access to authorized individuals. Next, let's move on to another crucial concept: least privilege. To preserve the confidentiality of information and ensure that it is only available to personnel who are authorized to see it, we use privileged access management, which is based on the principle of least privilege. That means each user is granted access to only the items they need, and nothing further. For example, only individuals working in billing will be allowed to view consumer financial data, and even fewer individuals will have the authority to change or delete that data. This maintains confidentiality and integrity, while also allowing availability by providing administrative access with an appropriate password or sign-on that proves the user has the appropriate permissions to access that data. Sometimes it is necessary to allow users to access the information via temporary or limited access, for instance, for a specific time period or just within normal business hours. Access rules can also limit the fields that individuals can have access to. One example is a healthcare environment. Some workers might have access to patient data but not their medical data. Individual doctors might have access only to data related to their own patients. In some cases, this is regulated by law, such as HIPAA in the United States, and by specific privacy laws in other countries. Systems often monitor access to private information, and if logs indicate that someone has attempted to access a database without the proper permissions, that will automatically trigger an alarm. The security administrator will then record the incident and alert the appropriate people to take action. The more critical information a person has access to, the greater the security should be around that access. They should definitely have multi-factor authentication, for example. Let's now discuss how Privileged Access Management, or PAM, plays a vital role in securing sensitive data. Privileged Access Management provides the first and perhaps most familiar use case. Consider a human user identity that is granted various create, read, update, and delete privileges on a database. Without privileged access management, the system's access control would have those privileges assigned to the administrative user in a static way, effectively on 24 hours a day, every day. Security would be dependent upon the login process to prevent misuse of that identity. Just-in-time privileged access management, by contrast, includes role-based specific subsets of privileges that only become active in real time, when the identity is requesting the use of a resource or service. This scenario really illustrates why privileged access management is important. For example, ABC Inc. has a small IT department that is responsible for user provisioning and administering systems. To save time, the IT department employees added their IDs to the domain admins group, effectively giving them access to everything within the Windows Server and workstation environment. While reviewing an invoice that was received via email, they opened an email with a malicious attachment that initiated a ransomware attack. Since they are using domain admin privileges, the ransomware was able to encrypt all the files on all servers and workstations. A privileged access management solution could limit the damage done by this ransomware if the administrator privileges are only used when performing a function requiring that level of access. Routine operations, such as daily email tasks, are done without a higher level of access. Next, let's explore privileged accounts and their risks. Privileged accounts are those with permissions beyond those of normal users, such as managers and administrators. Broadly speaking, these accounts have elevated privileges and are used by many different classes of users, including systems administrators, who have the principal responsibilities for operating systems, applications deployment, and performance management. Help desk or IT support staff, who often need to view or manipulate endpoints, servers, and application platforms by using privileged or restricted operations. Security analysts, who may require rapid access to the entire IT infrastructure, systems, endpoints, and data environment of the organization. Other classes of privileged user accounts may be created on a per-client or per-project basis to allow a member of that project or client service team to have greater control over data and applications. These few examples indicate that organizations often need to delegate the capability to manage and protect information assets to various managers, supervisors, leadership, or support staff with differing levels of authority and responsibility. This delegation, of course, should be contingent upon trustworthiness, since misuse or abuse of these privileges could lead to harm for the organization and its stakeholders. Typical measures used for moderating the potential for elevated risks from misuse or abuse of privileged accounts include the following: more extensive and detailed logging than regular user accounts. The record of privileged actions is vitally important as both a deterrent for privileged account holders that might be tempted to engage in untoward activity and as an administrative control, since the logs can be audited and reviewed to detect and respond to malicious activity. More stringent access control than regular user accounts. Even non-privileged users should be required to use multi-factor authentication methods to gain access to organizational systems and networks. Privileged users, or more accurately, highly trusted users with access to privileged accounts, should be required to go through additional or more rigorous authentication prior to gaining those privileges. Just-in-time identity should also be considered a way to restrict the use of these privileges to specific tasks and the times at which the user is executing them. Deeper trust verification than regular user accounts. Privileged account holders should be subject to more detailed background checks, stricter non-disclosure agreements, and acceptable use policies, and be willing to be subject to financial investigation. Periodic or event-triggered updates to these background checks may also be in order, depending on the nature of the organization's activities and the risks it faces. More auditing than regular user accounts. Privileged account activity should be monitored and audited at a greater rate and extent than regular usage. Finally, let's explore privileged access management in more detail. Consider the help desk role. In order to provide the level of service customers demand, it may be necessary for help desk personnel to reset passwords and unlock user accounts. In a Windows environment, this typically requires domain admin privileges. However, these two permissions can be granted alone, giving the help desk personnel a way to reset passwords without giving them access to everything in the Windows domain, such as adding new users or changing a user's information. These two actions should be logged and audited on a regular basis to ensure that any password resets were requested by the end user. This can be done by automatically generating a daily list of password resets to be compared to help desk tickets. This scenario allows the help desk personnel to resolve password-related issues on the first call, while doing so in a safe and secure manner. That's all for now. Thanks for tuning in. Keep the momentum going by checking out the next video in the series. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to Bluehat Cybersec Academy.